Hello and welcome to this edition of the Deep Dive Perspective. Today we're going to be talking about Palestine, about Israel, about peace deals, about Donald Trump and the usual games that we've seen being rolled out in any way, shape and form to try and stop Palestinians having the justice that they deserve. Well, Professor Haim Bresheeth, who's an associate research fellow at SOAS, is with me in the studio to dissect what's going on. All these happenings, all the flotilla issues, the change around the Middle East in general. We've seen all sorts of leaders around the world now openly rebelling against the Israeli genocide. This wasn't something we could have said less than 3 or 4 weeks ago, to be honest. So there's been a fundamental sea change, it seems, around the world, and there is a pressure building up to hold Israel to account. Whether they can really do it remains to be seen, but who better than Professor Haim to navigate this very complex unfolding situation. Welcome to the show, Professor Haim.
Thank you for having me.
The first question really is, of course, Netanyahu's response to Donald Trump and the supposed peace deal. Donald Trump loves lauding himself about how many peace deals he creates. There's very few that seem to actually work, whether it was the deal of the century or the deal that he promised that Russia would have over the Ukraine issue, or this one in Gaza now. None of them seem to actually amount to much. What's your take on this latest possibility of some sort of conclusion to this genocidal scenario?
There are a few ways that we can look at it. I think probably the most accurate manner of describing this peace deal is this is a very long application for a peace prize of the Nobel Prize Committee. More than anything else, it's the vaguest possible wording. And, the Oslo Accords were very vague. The Palestinians were told that this is about giving them a state, and they believed it. And, Edward Said pointed out to the Palestinian leadership that nowhere in the Oslo Accord is there anything about a Palestinian independent state. So it's not what is written, is what is not written is more important. What is written is nonsensical, is so wide of the mark, of any mark, that it doesn't matter. As long as the Israelis can read it in any way they want, and the Americans, obviously the Israelis wrote it, and Trump added the superlatives because he can't do without it. But it's actually for, intellectually challenged people that don't know what is happening or don't understand the general drift against Israel, because that drift is intensifying all the time, and they needed to do something about it. Now, I'm not saying that it's meaningless. I'm just saying that it's not what it says on the tin. This is not a peace proposal. The Palestinians were not negotiated with. No Palestinian was involved. They don't actually make any difference. It's not about them. It's about giving Israel all that it wants and doing it without having to fight Hamas, because it failed to defeat Hamas. And normally they run to daddy when they fail. They've done this famously in 2006 in Lebanon, when Hezbollah was giving them a terrible a bloody nose towards after 31 days in Lebanon, when they achieved nothing. They had to run because their losses were so serious and so severe. They had to run to the Americans and said, "Ceasefire now, please, please, please." So that happened also with the so-called 12-day war with Iran. They ran to Trump and said, "Get us out of this. This is getting very bloody." And now Netanyahu can see that his own nation is turning against him so seriously and so severely that he found this way out. And he hopes that Hamas is silly enough to sign it. Now, I say silly enough Hamas is not silly. If they do sign it, and I'm not going to criticize them for signing it, it's because there are almost 2 million people. Of course, almost 500,000 were killed. 2 million people in Gaza that needs a life. And if they don't sign it, the Americans will support Netanyahu in finishing off few 100,000 people in order to make a point. So this is an impossible situation. You sign it, you sign for slavery. You don't sign it, you sign for death. This is the situation the Palestinians are in at this second Nakba, which is much worse than the first Nakba. And they didn't make any difference in the first Nakba. They don't make any difference in this one. So if you look at the agreement, it offers the Palestinians whatever the Israelis want to offer them. I mean, that's the only way to look at it. And it offers them when the Israelis would like to, and it offers them nothing at all in writing. So, I mean, there is no second independent Palestinian state on the cards. There is no timetable. There is no limitations on Israel finishing the job, as the American president called it. So this is basically an open contract with, the Israelis can fill any meaning of any word in there. They can interpret it any way they want. So I don't think that the Palestinians are going to be fooled by it. Definitely not Hamas, and not even the PLO. The PLO is basically just going to play what was written to them. They will get a script, and they will have to repeat the script. So, people are going to look at every word in there. Actually, it's a waste of time because most of the words are so hollow and so wide-ranging and allow so many readings that this is much worse than what they signed to in Oslo in 1993.
Well, it does seem as though they're trying to prey on desperation, the notion that the world is desperate for this genocide to stop, and billions, maybe hundreds of millions certainly, have demonstrated against it. I saw the demonstrations in Berlin, in South Korea, in Japan, all around the world. The demonstrations are getting bigger. So, of course, the world is clamoring for this. The pressure is mounting on their leaders, who've literally done diddly squat. They've done nothing really to prevent this. The pressure is mounting on the United Nations. The credibility on all the international institutions which have hitherto said that they're there to try and create law and order around the world. They're all basically in tatters, and people like Francesca Albanese, some sort of lone voices have managed to rattle, I guess, a lot of those institutions even further. So is it a case that the rehashing of the two-state solution, which is what Keir Starmer, Macron, etc., have all been now doing over the last 4 or 5 weeks, along with the Saudis, and declaring their recognition of a Palestinian state, is that all a way, you think, of covering up their own sins that, over the last 2 years in their failure?
You see, Francesca Albanese that you mentioned now said that what the nations of Europe should do, amongst other things, is to send their navies to free Palestine, to free Gaza, to send, their, navy means it's an army unit, yeah, it's a military unit, and this image of European navies going to free Gaza has stuck in some people's mind, so that actually 2 of the navies, the Spanish and the Italian, are now doing a version of that, which is a light version. They are with the flotilla, telling Israel, touch them, and you are fighting with us. It didn't stop the Israelis attacking the flotilla, but it stopped them from basically sending any boats to the bottom of the Mediterranean at the moment. So actually, even in Europe, the heart of the support system of Israel and the United States, not just in this conflict, but also the conflict in Ukraine. This Europe is now less than safe for the Israelis and the US. The fact that Britain, of all nations, actually stepped into the French and other camp and recognized Palestine as a state where there is no state of Palestine and nobody is offering a state for Palestine, is also a sign that they are nervous. They know that they are candidate for, in a good time, to stand in the ICC as defendants, not as giving evidence, but as defendants. But I think your question already includes quite a lot of the problematic that we're facing. This is no longer about Gaza. This is about the international legal system, which is crumbled. It doesn't exist. The ICC and ICJ are now under sanctions by the strongest nation on earth. Some American senators advised that they should be bombed. Those, two august bodies that are not doing their job properly because they are frightened to death. And you can see why they are frightened. The UN is not doing its job. It's not actually supporting international peace. It's not actually using any sanctions against countries like the United States and Israel that attacked Iran while negotiating with it. They attacked it. And this was again repeated on the attack in Doha. You use the negotiation as a marker, as a GPS point to attack the negotiators. This is actually all laws and all international rules are broken by the most powerful people on earth. So what we are now not discussing is peace with the Palestinians or life for Gaza. We are discussing something much more difficult, and that is the fact that the declining West has turned so destructive in its desperation for power and for keeping its position of the most powerful bloc, or one of the most powerful bloc, you can say. In their desperation, they are prepared to destroy every state in West Asia. They've already done so to states in Africa, in the Horn of Africa, in Libya. They've done so in Lebanon and Syria and Iraq, of course. They've destroyed Yemen. So all these are signs of the method that they are using in order to have their own version of peace. It's their own version of a Western order or an American order. It's a Pax Americana. And that Pax Americana is now enforced against the Palestinians. That's how I think we should look at it. So I don't think anyone of all those people involved, from Tony Blair to Trump to all the presidents of Europe to Netanyahu, none of them is interested in the least in having a Palestinian state.
Well, Netanyahu said there will be no Palestinian state. So he's outright rejecting any. He's saying we won't even withdraw from these territories.
They even passed legislation in Israel that says that this will be illegal to suggest it. So we have now, an absurd theater show. This is a very evil comedy. It's a black comedy. Now, the Palestinians are broken. We have to be clear about it.
Sure.
They have no food, of course, no arms. And yet, despite the great desperation that Israel has caused in Gaza and in the rest of Palestine, what we can see is the failure to achieve what they wanted by military means. Now, most of us, yourself, myself, and many others, have said there is no military solution to the problem of Palestine. You have to speak, and you have to actually deal with the facts, like this is a colonial occupation. This is a settler colonial state. In the 21st century, there's no place for settler colonial state. Let's discuss decolonizing Palestine like the rest of the world decolonized. But that is not allowed. That is not allowed by the United States.
So stopping the occupation is still not on the agenda, basically.
Well, nobody's talking about occupation. The word is not mentioned. And even the occupation of Gaza, there is no date of when the Israelis would leave Gaza. You must have noticed that there are no dates there at all. From point 1 to point 21, there are no dates whatsoever. There are no targets either. So whatever we want, we'll achieve when we decide we want it. This is the kind of language which is used. So would Hamas sign it? For the life of 2 million people, that might be something they have to do. I won't criticize them for that. I mean, they have been fighting 2 years against the West, not just against Israel, but against the West. I mean, our government in Britain has sent the RAF to collect information on the Palestinians for the bombing raids of Israel. The US has supplied all the weapons, as so did Germany, Italy, France, UK. They've supported it militarily, they supported it politically, they supported it financially, and yet, here they are. They're still fighting for freedom. So I don't think that we are talking about this amazing peace plan that might give Trump his dream come true, to
the Nobel Prize. Yeah.
He might get the Nobel Peace Prize, but he won't get the peace because peace is not done by forcing people into it.
The other question that arises, and Alistair Crook raised this in one of his recent interviews that I saw, and it's a very valid kind of crystal ball gazing that he did. He talked about the idea of needing to close the Gaza front for Israel and the US in order that they can do the next part of the project, the real project, which I think you alluded to and hinted at earlier in the interview, which is to basically destroy the Islamic Republic of Iran. Because as far as they're concerned, all roads to resistance, armed resistance and other resistance in West Asia and particularly in Gaza and Palestine lead to Tehran.
Definitely, it's true that they intend to attack Iran before Christmas. And there are many reasons for this. The reasons you pointed out are very important. Iran is not towing the line that the Americans demand. It has an agreement with China. It has very close links with Russia and also an agreement with Russia. It is not as isolated as they would like it to be. And all that they have done, yes, they have harmed its economy, they harmed its medicine, they harmed it socially by the different sanctions, but they have not defeated it. So the defeat might include nuclear weapons, for all we know, because both Trump and Netanyahu are not past being mad. They use madness as a method. It's just another way of doing things. And for them, this is, a good method. And they practice it all the time on different levels. But I hope that Iran, like it did in the 12-day war, can fight back and give Israel the bloody nose that it did last time, but, more severe. And that might be the thing that will stop the total slavery of the Palestinians. Because without support from somewhere, and BRICS is missing in action, BRICS, I think one thing to say about BRICS is they don't like wars. Most of the members of BRICS don't like wars. I mean, even Russia doesn't actually like the war in Ukraine. It was forced into it. So they tried to resolve those things with pacts, with agreements, with agreements that tell the United States, don't do this. But the Americans choose, in all cases, to disregard those hints and continue with Israel in attacking here, there, and everywhere. I don't think this system can go on for very long. For example, the UN is defunct. The UN is not functioning. It cannot function in a country that doesn't allow people like, I'm not a supporter of the PLO in its current role of, another Israeli organization fighting against Palestinians. But the fact that they didn't even think that they should allow the Palestinians to come to a debate about the future of Palestine, that tells you who we're dealing with.
So, well, they're defunct. It seems you're absolutely right. I can't disagree, because they seem to be able to execute sanctions on Russia, on Iran, and all those nations or forces which are anti-Western imperialism or Zio-Western imperialism. But they seem to implement no sanctions on those who are allied to that kind of that phenomena. I mean, I'll give you an example. It was Vanunu who unveiled the Israeli nuclear program. The IAEA and all these other international agencies have an obligation to make sure that nuclear weapons are controlled in some shape or form. And they have been desperately doing that with Iran, in fact, giving the license to the Americans and the Israelis today to highlight Iran as a problem, as a nuclear threat, when it doesn't even have nuclear weapons. But when it comes to Israel, there's been absolutely zero action, even though everybody knows that they have between 90 and 400 nuclear warheads, yet no action from the UN, no action from the IAEA. They're not even part of the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. This kind of unfairness, fundamentally, I think you can trace it back partly to the veto in the United Nations. So what do you think needs to change within that international structure to make it more fair and genuinely an international order we can trust?
First of all, I think that this veto system must change. It must reflect not the reality of 1945, but the reality of 2025. It doesn't do that. So secondly, the UN has to move out of New York. It belongs in BRICS. It has to reflect what has happened in the last 20 or 30 years, and it doesn't do that. And as long as it doesn't do that, it's as not a serviceable organization. It can't stop wars. It can't bring peace. It can't bring order. It should have, 2 years ago, sent a protection force into Palestine to offer the Palestinians the minimum of support and protection. This has not happened. Since 1948, when Israel was created as the second apartheid state, after South Africa in the same year, the UN has actually done all it can to harm Palestine. It divided the country in a manner which not only doesn't make sense, but there is not even a pretense of fairness. Yeah, it gave a third of a country that belonged to the Palestinians, it's their land. To the settlers, it gave 55% when they were a third of the population. It actually passed a resolution to return the Palestinian refugees to Palestine, and Israel must agree to them coming back. And when Israel said, bugger off, we don't care, it didn't do anything. So this is a system that sanctions are used when the U.S. wants sanctions, and U.S. and its, partners. But if it's not a sanction that the U.S. has offered, it's not passing. So for 80 years almost, no sanctions were put against Israel, which has started more wars than the rest of the world together, that has created more refugees after the Second World War than any other group, that has now been involved in genocide for 2 whole years, that has done ethnic cleansing, that has used apartheid. Apartheid in 1974 brought South Africa outside of the UN. It was ejected from the UNGA because of apartheid. Israel, with crimes 1,000 times more serious, has never faced any sanction and still faces no sanction. The UN is not functioning. A legal system that is not offering the same sanctions for the same crime is not fit for purpose.
So, given this quite depressing, if you like, set of realities and conclusions about international order, about the Americans and their trajectory, the Israelis' exceptionalism and their control of most of the most powerful nations in the world, it paints a really bleak picture for those who want true justice and peace around the world. But turning to that, if they Let's do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. Last time you were in the studio, Professor, you gave me a very sort of erudite insight into the internal collapse of Israel, and the exodus to Cyprus, for instance, was an example. The economic, if you like, undermining of Israel in terms of its the war itself inflicting a whole load of problems on their employment issues and their economy generally. Their tensions within Israel regarding Netanyahu's corruption and his kind of criminality, as well as the failure of Israel to re-establish some of the settlements up in the north, or Ashkelon, Kiryat Shimona, these sort of places. There was an indication, of course, that this was all a possibility of an Israel where it becomes unviable because of its own kind of internal situation. Do you still hold by that? And if they go to war, say for instance on Iran, what are the implications of that for the world?
Well, first of all, the implications for Israel is a further division, deepening the division between the two parts of the society. They face an election next year. The way things are looking now, Netanyahu will not be re-elected, and that's why he's doing all the things that he's doing now, to give himself a bit of clean space without war before the election. He might succeed in that, but I don't think he will be elected as a prime minister. This doesn't mean that the problem is gone away. Netanyahu is not the problem. The problem is Zionism. The problem is the Zionist settler colonial state. And that is not going anywhere. But it is weakening. It is weakening on every single aspect. I think more than 1 million already left Israel. And they're not going to return in a hurry, because that's the nature of people in high tech and in those, they're young, they're looking for a future. They're not necessarily politically progressive, but they want a life. And Israel is not offering a life, it offers war for the foreseeable future. A war with Iran is not a war with Hamas. Yeah, Iran now has very advanced systems of anti-aircraft missiles that it got from mainly Russia. It is getting jet fighters of Chinese design who are better than anything the West has got to put against it. And this was proven in Vietnam. So I think everyone says the attack will come before Christmas because they want to attack Iran before it is totally au fait with those new systems. Once those systems are bedded in, it'll be very difficult for Israel to gain anything. And it will still be very difficult for Israel to gain anything unless Daddy allows them to use the bomb. And I'm not excluding this. This madness may take place. So if you ask about the rest of the world, of course, it's not good news for Israel. It's not good news for Iran. Iran doesn't want a war, but it will be foisted upon it like it was in the 12-day war. The rest of the world, anyone who doesn't have nuclear weapons, well, they better get some. Yeah, because that is what the Americans are forcing the world population in. The Americans won't touch North Korea. Why? Because they have nuclear weapons. They wouldn't touch Iran if it had nuclear weapons, but it will do anything to stop them from doing that, not because the nuclear weapons of Iran are going to be used, and Iran is even against nuclear weapons, as you know, but because Iran is supporting the resistance against Israel and by definition against the United States. Iran is protecting a number of centers where independent forces are now working to limit Israel, to limit its advance. They've advanced in Syria, they've advanced in Lebanon, but elsewhere their advance is checked. Now they're even involved in Baluchistan, supporting the forces against the Pakistani government. So Israel is not limited to interest around itself. No, they're talking about the whole of Western and Central Asia, as far as Pakistan. That worries India, that worries Russia, that worries China, and worries all the other Arab and Muslim countries, quite rightly. So what we're talking about is a future without any foreseeable arrangements of peace. Now, China is obviously a trading nation. That's what it is more than anything. The Belt and Road Initiative is a trading it's a huge and an important move for economic economic existence of China everywhere. It's very different from what the United States is doing. The United States is ceding military bases everywhere. The Chinese are actually building. The Americans are destroying. So that's the difference between the two systems now fighting for control. And Israel is exactly where it belongs because they specialize in destruction. So I think the implications of a war against Iran might be very far-reaching if the Israelis get their way. First of all, if the war happens, which is almost certain, and secondly, if they get the upper hand, then the destruction is going to advance in East and Central Asia at a pace which we haven't seen yet. So this is the desperation of the West, which is spreading to military actions everywhere to stop what is a trading nation supremacy of China. And the Americans will not be, they will use any method, especially destructive methods, to stop China. They see this as the most important thing that they need to do. So I'm very worried about a war against Iran because it won't stop there. One of the signs that the Americans and Israel are planning to attack Iran very soon is this plan that they are pushing under time pressure, because they can't really attack Iran when the Israeli Air Force is attacking Gaza 24 hours a day, this is its job at the moment, and the pilots are very tired. They're talking about it all the time. And they must end this if they want to start a new war, a new major war, because it wouldn't be attacking people without defenseless people in Gaza. They will be attacking a well-armed Iran with modern arms. So they have to finish their involvement in Gaza lock, stock, and barrel. They have to seal this and start a new chapter, a new bloody chapter in Iran. That is, to me, a very clear sign that they intend to do that they intend to attack Iran.
Well, that's a wonderful way of, I think, contextualizing and summarizing from where we began in terms of the issue of Gaza and the specific issue of the fake peace that's been put on the table, or the fake solution, to the reality of where Gaza fits within a global context, and why perhaps even that war has been going on. Because let's not forget that the gas that exists off the coast of Gaza has been also a massive financial incentive, and it seems to me that is the underlying theme for everything that the Anglo-Zionist, the American empire does. The Israeli empire, you can call it whatever you want, that it's plunder, it's the resource acquisition that they require through force, through military threats, and their desperation to become or maintain themselves as a unipolar, if you like, power in the world, the exceptionalist force in the world. And this seems like a struggle that is beyond just Gaza and Palestine and its own woes, and it's beyond perhaps Iran as well. And I think this is what gives the whole world food for thought. But thank you, Professor Haim, for a thoroughly covered topic. For us, ordinary folk living on the ground, often it's easy for us to bury problems and try and ignore huge issues that we feel we've got nothing we can do about. It's a human nature, I think, that most of us try to go into safety and comfort zones and become hopeful that nothing bad will happen. Well, it does seem as though that's a little bit of a forlorn hope in the current context, because oil definitely is something that the US wants from Iran. It seems as though the battle with China for economic control of the world is dictating most of the American push. The American debt requires that oil and requires that finance as well, because Trump needs to cover up the burgeoning debt, which is accelerating beyond all proportions. And so these factors are clearly driving a kind of a megalomaniac, psychopathic policy, international policy, and one which will affect us all, because the war in Iran, as far as I can see, if it turns into something which proliferates into the shutdown, for instance, of the Hormuz Straits, it means 20-25% of the energy that we get around the world will be under threat, if not closed altogether. It could be that US bases get destroyed around the Middle East, drawing in all the other nations. Oil fields could be knocked out across Saudi Arabia and the region as well if it gets really hot. That is not going to leave us unaffected. The reality is that everybody's daily bread and butter will go up. Our cost of living, which is already under stress, we're already being put under pressure. But this war is not good news for anybody. But it does seem as though it's our elected leaders in the West which are pushing for it. I guess the obligation for us is to push back against them and to also become smarter about the kind of leaderships we have. We need leaders who have a moral backbone, who have principles, who have some common sense and sensibility for human civilization, not plunderers and not murderers and not genocidals. Again, once again, thanks to Professor Haim for giving us that insight, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of The Deep Dive Perspective. Do remember to like, share, and subscribe. Do even thank us if you can on those buttons, and we'll keep bringing you people who tell the real truth. It's happened again today. Thank you for watching.